Genesis 18, as we're coming into this, earlier in the chapter, God has come with a couple of his angels to visit with Abraham and Sarah. God has reiterated the promise of Isaac coming. He gave that promise in Genesis 15. He's going to re-give it here, remind him of it, and then put a time frame on it. And then after that is when God sends the two angels away, and then God says, I'm not going to hide what I'm about to do from Abraham, my friend, Abraham, my servant. And that's when God gives Abraham the insight and the knowledge that God is about to go destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So as we come into this passage, that's when we know, we're familiar with it. Abraham begins to ask the Lord, hey, if there's 50 righteous, if there's 45 righteous, 30 righteous, and goes on down the line, asked him, if there's that many righteous people in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, will you spare the cities? Okay? And Genesis 18:25, Pastor mentioned it last Wednesday, and I've just been dwelling on it, being encouraged by it a lot this week. But Genesis 18:25, Abraham is speaking to the Lord, and he says, that be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee, shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And so Abraham is here speaking to the Lord, and he says, this be far from thee to do after this manner. And as God is going in to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham knows that Lot is there. Abraham knows Lot's family is there. In 2 Peter 2, we're going to see where the Bible calls Lot a just man, calls him a godly man, but that he was vexed by the things that he saw and heard daily there in the city. And we could talk about the decisions he made. But in that moment, Abraham says, Lord, it's something that's far from you, because you're the judge that does right, that the righteous should be as the wicked. And I got to thinking about what would become of the wicked, what's going to become of the righteous. And I've just been encouraged, and I may not preach much, but just go through a few passages. But the thought of that be far from thee after this manner. And we think about things that are far from God, and we're going to see the judgment God places on the wicked. That fire and brimstone is going to fall on Sodom and Gomorrah. In the book of Jude and 2 Peter, we're going to see where he says they suffer the vengeance of eternal fire. And we know that hell is a place forever separated from God, where unrepentant sinners go, far from God with no hope of that. And it's in that same aspect of something that's far from God that Abraham looks and said, God, you're righteous and you're just. And just as those wicked sinners are going to be as far from you as it could be, this iniquity that your people would be slain, that your people would be as the wicked people, it's that same type of thing that's far from you, that God would do that because he does right. In Psalm 1, the Bible says that the way of the ungodly shall perish. But the Bible tells us in Proverbs, the way of the Lord is strength to the upright. We see in Psalm 1 where sinners shall not stand in the congregation of the upright. And when we think about congregation, as we follow that word through the Bible, we're going to end in Revelation where there's a congregation of saints and angels around the throne for all of eternity singing praises. We're going to see in Revelation 22 where God's name is written in our forehead. He's the faithful and the true, the beginning and the end. And we follow that through, and it says the sinners will not be in that congregation. But that's something that's unique for us who are saved by grace, by faith in Jesus Christ, that we're going to have unique to us. But that's far from the Lord that he would make them as the wicked. And I've just been encouraged by that. I was reading through Ecclesiastes last week, and just as Solomon goes through that, and he talks about if there is no God, if there is nothing after death, everything's just vanity. Eat, drink, do whatever, because it doesn't matter. And then he's going to go on, he's going to say, but if there is a God after this, guess what? All this stuff is still vanity, except for the fact that God is going to call back to remembrance. And he tells us that there at the end. So he says to fear God and walk with him. But in that, it's easy to look, and this is just where my heart's been this week. It's easy to look at all the things going on. All the wicked prosper. You know the song, Tempted and Tried, we're oft made to wonder. And he says farther along, and that farther along is coming. When God, in Revelation 21, is going to wipe away all tears, old things are going to pass away, new heaven, new earth, for the former things are gone. He's the faithful and true, the Alpha, Omega, beginning and end. He makes all things new, is what he says. And it's right, and shall not the judge do right? Even Lot there in that city, he wasn't living right, he wasn't doing godly things, but even he was pulled out. Even someone that had to be forcefully pulled out of the wicked because he was godly, because Christ took that wrath that would have been poured out on him Christ took that wrath for himself, and that's why it says, shall not the judge of all the earth do right? It is right, and it's just, 1 John tells us, because he's faithful and just to forgive us, because that blood was shed, because Christ took that payment for us.